This tank is the Badger. This is a British Tier 10 tank destroyer, and the map is Erlenberg. I am going to get 2 kills. I'm going to do 4,200 damage, and I'm going to show you a nice sniping position that you can use in this game. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I like to play in the middle of the map, and I like to flank the enemy tanks. And the reason why I flank enemy tanks is because in the old matchmaking, whenever I was bottom tier, I knew I had to hit the enemy on the side armor, so I looked for flanking positions in order to give myself an advantage. You'll notice that most of my allies are going on the west side. We have very few tanks on the east side. And right over here is one of the positions you can use to set up on the enemy's flank. And there are many positions to choose from. This isn't the only one. If you're a larger tank, you're going to have your camel rating won't be as good, so you're going to have to be further away from the enemy, which usually means you're going to have to be on the west side of the river. But if you have a smaller tank, obviously you can get on the other side of the river. There's other positions you can choose. Another great thing about this position is that the water in front of me is shallow, so if I want to, I can drive right across the water to the other side. See, there's some nice positions over here. You've got a lot of bushes. You've got the, you can sit in the river. That was my first kill. I'm up to 1,100 damage, 760 spotting damage. You do have to watch out for tanks that might be in the position where the E50M is. You really want to track these types of tanks in this position. So you can see I missed his track. I don't know what he thought he was doing, but that wasn't going to work. Score is 6-2. I'm up to 3,700 damage. Because I have a lot of rounds, I'm going to take a lot of blind shots. So the Foch that was up on that hill is now out of the game. It looks like there's only, there's definitely 3 enemy tanks on the west, 2 on the east. There's 1 tank that hasn't been spotted yet in the game. The Badger is definitely a great tank. It's got great frontal armor. Especially if it's hull down. It's unlikely I'm going to be able to pick up any more kills in this game. Let's speed it up a little. And that's the game. The score is 15-3. I got 4,200 damage, 1,400 spotting damage, and 2 kills. This tank is the E-25. This is a German Tier 7 tank destroyer, and the map is Erlenberg. I am going to get 7 kills in this game, and I'm going to show you a sniping position that you can use on this map. There's a few different ways to use this sniping position. You're going to have some bushes. You're going to have bushes on either side of the river, and plus you have the ridge line of the river that you can also use, and you got a lot of buildings here. So you'll notice across the other side where the FCM-50T is, there's some bushes over in that area also, but I'm just as well starting out in this particular position. It's a lot of bushes over here. And obviously you want to find a position that's far enough away that you're not going to get spotted, and also a position where you'll be able to shoot over as many houses as possible. Luckily, because of the way that the hill is set up in the distance, you can be in a lot of different positions and you can hit tanks on that distant hill. It's not, you don't have to worry so much about being exactly on the side. Now, this first tank to show up, he's on the far side of a hill. He's on the back side of that hill in front of me. Now, obviously, this is an example where one of the buildings is in the way. And this is an assault defend game, and I am on the defending team. So I got 272 damage so far. So right now the biggest issue I have is that there is a building that is in the way. If you look at the mini-map, you will notice that a large portion of my team is in the center of the map. It looks like there are 4 tanks in the middle of the map, including 3 heavy tanks. The score is 3-0. So I happened to notice that that tank was between the gap of the buildings, which is why I stopped at that position. And here's the same. I noticed that there's a tank that was in the gap between the buildings. There is a position you can use that doesn't have a problem with the houses. The position is right in front of me. You can see that there's a tree directly in front of me. You can hide over there. However, that position, you're more likely to be spotted. I am starting to run low on regular rounds, so I'm going to have to switch to the AG or the APCR rounds after the next 6 shots. Okay, so it looks like we cleaned up most of the tanks on the east side of the map. There are a few stragglers that we'll pick up, and this is obviously where you can cross over in the water. And right here where I am right now, there's a ridge line. You can sit in the water and fire from this position up at the tanks in front of you. You can double bush if you knock this tree down and sit in these bushes right here. That's 3 kills for me. So for that case, I had to knock the wall down before my shell would fly through. And I am using APCR rounds because I've run out of regular rounds. That's 5 kills. Having mobility, being fast, and having a fast reload allows you to get a lot of kills, especially if the enemy tanks are low on hit points. That's 6 kills. And that's 7 kills. And that's the game. The score is 15-6. I got 1,700 damage, 400 spotting damage, and 7 kills. This tank is the RU-251. This is a German Tier 9 light tank, and the map is Glacier. I am going to get 4 kills, and I'm going to do 3,600 damage in this tank. One of the things that I like to do is I like to head to the center and spot enemy tanks immediately so we can get a little bit of intelligence. And I'm also trying to snipe at any vulnerable tanks that I can. You'll notice that most of the enemy tanks were behind rock formations, so they were difficult to take shots at. I have gotten some spotting damage, but I haven't done any actual damage yet. You notice we got a lot of heavy tanks on my team in the south. Not really an appropriate position. In general, you should play your tank where it plays best. And there's a certain point, for example, in the south, you can play any tank in any position you want, but that's not an ideal position for heavy tanks. They might want to know, how do you know where you play your tanks? It has less to do with the class. It doesn't matter if it's a heavy tank or a medium tank. What matters is how long is your reload, how much armor do you have, what's your turret like, how fast does your tank go. All those different things need to be taken into consideration when you determine where you play. For example, if you have a long reload, if you have a short reload, a fast reload, you want the enemy to be out in the open, which means you're going to have to play in a field. Because if you don't, then the enemy is going to take their shot and hide from you while you're sitting there unable to fire. So that's an example. Another example is a turretless tank, such as a turretless tank destroyer. You want to be in a corridor that protects your sides. If you have a tank that's vulnerable on the side or in the rear, you want it to be protected, so it would be good to have protection on both sides of your tank. So I began by playing in the middle of the map, and I was sniping at the Panther II that was climbing up into the spotting position. But now I've moved to the south of the map, the southeast, to help my team as they're spotting tanks along the road that travels on the edge of the map. You can see that it's difficult right now for me to get shots on those tanks. However, there are gaps in the road that they have to cross, and when they cross those gaps, if they're spotted, you'll be able to kill them. One thing about this particular game is it's showing a variety of the different positions. I saw an opportunity and I took it. You're getting to see a good variety of tactics. What to do when there's an enemy light tank who's a one-shot, shooting on the tanks that are here in the forest area, shooting the tanks that are up in where the aircraft carrier is, the spotting at the beginning of the game. So we're going to see a variety of tactics in this particular game. It's a very well-rounded game. I'm up to 2,000 damage and 1,100 spotting damage. Now I'm pretty much running out of targets. All of my targets are at the edge of my spotting range. I'm going to have to come up with a new strategy. You do have to be careful in this position. If you get spotted, you can get shot at from all different directions. So you do want to stay low if you get spotted over here. Stay on the south side of the buildings. There's a T-28 that could potentially shoot at me and a Scorpion G. So we have to spot that tank. I'm going to go and see if I can spot that tank. You can see that he's running away. He's still within range of my Scorpion G on my team. I could easily get right up on him there. He must be reloading because he is an autoloader. He is at some point going to run out of ammunition, which is going to cause him to retreat. You can see that my team has killed the last tank in the northwest. So I'm going to reposition my tank so that the Emil cannot shoot at me. The good thing about this particular game is it does show a variety of the tactics and strategy that you need to learn for this particular map. So the last thing we have to do is locate the final 2 tanks. And I may have made a mistake and assumed that he was out of ammo. I did ram him for 85 damage I got out of him. So although he did die, I made the incorrect assumption that he was out of ammo. I got 4 kills, 3,600 damage, and 1,400 spotting damage. This tank is the Fury. This is a tier 6 medium tank. I'm not sure what nation it is. It must be an American tank. I don't see any marker on it indicating the nation. I am going to get 3 kills. I'm going to do 2,000 damage. The map is Live Oak, so I'm going to show you a spotting position that you can use when you play on this map. Usually if I have a moderate tank, a non-scouting tank, I go to a particular position. There's 3 different positions I use. For scouting, I tend to go over here to these bushes on the right. To do some damage, I go over here. And if I have good gun depression, I will go into this dip area, but on the other side of the road. Now over here, there's a few different ways you can go. You can go behind this mound, and you get a nice clear shot. You can go into this bush over here, knock this tree down. You can get the tanks as they cross that alley and as they cross this gap over here. It's very difficult to spot the tanks over here. There's a lot of objects in the way, so it is quite difficult to get the tanks as they cross in that gap area. If you go to the position where I am right now, there's a fewer objects and it's a lot clearer. You do have to worry about how much of your tank gets exposed to the enemy. You'll have to try different positions with different tanks and see which position works best. When you play the game, you want your tank to be flat as much as possible. You have to be careful when you get on a sloped area. Being on a slope can screw up your gun depression. Trying to find that Lorraine 40T. After the tanks have made it to town, the next thing that I do is I try to flank them from the rear. He took way too long to turn around. Did a lot of damage to that T-150. You can see that we have them somewhat surrounded in the town. Look at where I am on the mini-map. Got a lot of nice shots through there. So we won in the town quite easily. There's one more tank. So I got 1 kill and 1,300 damage. I got 400 spotting damage. The reason why I use the auto aim is because I know I have to do some driving. So I wanted to get locked on him so I could drive to his position as quickly as possible. Had to drive through a lot of obstacles. You'll notice that I'm pinging on the mini-map the B0 section, which is where I think the enemy artillery is. So my allies know that there's a tank there, and hopefully they'll figure out on their own that I'm referring to artillery. I'm going to do some spotting for my team. You want to stay high when you want to spot, go low when you want to hide. Scores 11-7. In this game, along the rail line, you'll notice that in a few different locations, for example, right there, there is a bush that's on the rail. So what happens is often tanks will use those locations to peek over the rail line. So if you know where those are, there's another one, well, that might be a fallen tree. If you know where they are, you can predict where the enemy is going to be. Obviously, I'm going to go in for a ram. So because I was able to ram him for 67 damage, I was able to use that shell to fire at the WZ for an additional 119 damage. My ally in the south has died, so I'm taking up fire on I'm in crossfire right now. What I could have done is I could have butted up against the artillery. It's not necessary anymore, obviously. That's the game. This tank is a Centurion 7/1. This is a British Tier 9 medium tank, and the map is Karelia. This is an assault defend game. I'm on the assaulting team. I am going to get 2 kills. I'm going to do 2,000 damage, 3,600 spotting damage, and this game is going to be an easy win for my team. As I always do, I like to play in the middle of the map, so I'm heading in that direction because this tank, you know, it's reasonably fast, so I'm going to head for a sniping position, but I might pause on the way there. So because I was spotted, I'm going to head for the nearest rocks. Get into those rocks. Take advantage of those spotted tanks. Nice little gap to shoot through the rock formation. Now this is not the sniping position that's ideal, but it is a good starting position. It's well defended. It's got a decent amount of bush cover. Ideally, you want to be surrounded by as many bushes as possible. So over here, you can see there's a lot more bushes on this side. And I can hit the enemy tanks as they pass through the gap. So because I was spotted, I'm going to reverse behind the hard cover. Now I know that there's another tank that's still there, which is the Conqueror. Already up to 3,400 spotting damage. So I'm advancing to my bush position again, my sniping position. You do have to check both of your flanks. You have to check, obviously, the north and the south. I missed an opportunity to hit that Somua in the north because I was focused a little bit too much on the south. If you do get spotted heading close to the enemy base, one of the best things to do is to get as close as possible to the enemy base. The enemy usually isn't going to come after you if you get close to that ridge. So now I decided to go through the center. You don't have to go in the center. There's lots of ways to go up. Usually it's pretty safe to roll up in. You can see that nobody can hit me easily, and I can just drive right into their base. Lousy shot. You'll notice that I shot at that tank's lower plate without using the sniper mode. It's very simple. When you're close to an enemy tank, you just point the pointer where you want to fire. It's not that accurate. I miss a lot, but it allows you to aim very quickly without using the sniper mode. I'm at a very bad angle. He can hit my side armor. Now this is a much better angle for me. The best angle is to have your gun pointed over the corner of your tank. Scores 12-3. The best angle is to have the gun pointed over the corner of your tank, the inside corner, just as depicted in this overhead view. I've done a lot of testing, and if you put it too much towards the corner, you're going to get penetrated on the side. So we got one enemy tank left. That was an easy game. The score is 14-3. I did 2,000 damage, 3,600 spot damage, and I got 2 kills. This tank is the T-110E4. This is an American Tier 10 tank destroyer. The map is Karelia. This is also an assault defend game, and I'm on the defending team. I am going to get 3 kills. I'm going to do 3,800 damage, and I'm going to do it while sniping from a midfield area. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I like to play in this position, and you can play this position with almost any tank. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because this tank is a little bit slower. It's only 40 kilometers. It's a little bit larger. It's a little bit less mobile. However, I'm still going to do well playing this tank in this position. I like to play over here because there's a lot of bushes and there's a lot of hard rocks. You can sit here the whole game and not be spotted depending on how well the enemy comes out scouting. Now, it's still early in the game. It's still possible that the enemy might have scouts. That was 647 damage I did to that enemy tank. So they might still send out scouts that we don't know about yet. And he's taken out of the game. I did 1,010 damage to that tank. So you notice that I'm focusing now on the southern flank. You got to check both of your flanks. Difficult for this. There's an ally that's right next to me. It's not good for us both to be playing in the exact same position. because obviously there's going to come a point where you'll notice a lot of enemy tanks suddenly appear to the north. You know, we don't want to shoot each other, and if one of us gets spotted, we might get incoming fire that's intended for one that hits both of us. So it increases the chance that we get injured from incoming fire. I could easily get hit because he gets spotted. So what I would prefer is if the STA-2 had taken up a different position. There's lots of positions you can take up in this middle area. That was 873 damage against the Leopard prototype. You have to be very patient. There's going to be a lot of times when you're only going to be able to hit the top of the turret of the enemy tank, and you have to wait for enemy tanks that are trying to flank, the ones that are coming around trying to flank, or the ones that are perfectly situated within a gap. Unfortunately, I missed that tank. For example, it looks like the T-30 is closest to me. However, there is some solid cover between us. So I see the M48 Patton on the mini-map. Maybe I'll be able to hit him. So I missed some key chances to hit that M48 Patton. But I see better targets up here in the north. That was 759 damage. He's out of the game. I'm up to 2,642 damage right now. Obviously, that was a blind shot on an ISM. I'm firing high explosive rounds at this point. On the south side, the enemy has killed all of our tanks in the south, so they will become unspotted. So the blind shot earlier that I tried on that ISM did not hit anything. I did get some spotting damage on the AMX-65T. One thing that's interesting about HE rounds is that they tend to have a 1 meter burst radius. So even if you hit near a tank or under a tank, you can still do damage to an enemy tank even if you don't directly hit it. The disadvantage is the velocity of the ammo is a lot slower. You can see we've got some enemy tanks that are somewhat of a threat. They don't usually come up from this position, the IS-7 and the AMX-65T. So that's 3 kills for me. I took another tank out of the game. Still a lot of enemy tanks in the north. Did 239 damage to that tank. He was sniping up on that hill. There is one enemy tank that has not yet been spotted in the game. So it's possible that there's still one enemy tank up on the hill. And there's that ISM. He's possibly in a position where I'll be able to hit him. Have to keep switching between flanks. Did 346 damage. And you'll notice that when I switch between flanks, I do turn the tank itself, the hull of the tank. It brings the gun around a lot faster. So the STA-2 and I remained here. We were unspotted for the entirety of the game. We didn't take any damage. Did 303 damage against the T-28. So obviously now that the T-28 was taken out of the game. So now we know where all the enemy tanks are. I return to my position, which is a little bit better defended and more double bushing. I'm unlikely to be spotted again. There's unlikely to be spotted again. There's 2 enemy tanks left in the game. We know where both of them are. So I decided to get closer. One of the things that I would have done differently in this game is I could have advanced a lot sooner on the enemy team. So I missed that shot, unfortunately. Was very close. He's not going to kill me. And that's the game. Score was 15-8. I got 3 kills, 3,500 damage, 750 spotting damage. This tank is the Sheridan. This is an American Tier 10 light tank. The map is Karelia. I am going to get 2 kills. I'm going to do 3,600 damage. It's an assault defend game. I'm on the assaulting team. I like to snipe from the midfield, and the reason why is because there's a lot of great cover. There's a lot of solid rocks to hide behind. There's a lot of bushes to hide behind. There's a lot of easy targets to go after. Because of the fact that I'm a light tank, I might not fire my gun. Because obviously I don't want to get spotted. I'm lightly armored. If I get spotted, I'm going to take a lot of damage very quickly. So I headed straight to the solid cover as soon as I fired my gun. Also, my gun is a low penetrating gun, which means that it's unlikely to penetrate the armor of a lot of these tanks. I do have the Coca-Cola consumable, and I have the Binox, and I'm also running the coated optic directive to increase my viewing ability. Notice that I slowly advance closer and closer to the enemy. I'm not going in a rush. As long as we can spot somebody, we're going to keep them spotted. As soon as I fire, I'm going to head to solid cover just in case I was spotted. Now you can see that everyone is at the edges of my spotting range. So everyone's pretty far from me. They're unlikely to spot me at this point. I didn't see any targets that I'd be able to shoot at. You'll notice that the bat chat is in the center of the map, so I'm taking up a different position. There's no reason for us to both take the same position. It's unfortunate that I was spotted here. It's going to severely limit my ability to sneak up on the enemy. Wasn't able to do any damage. I must have missed that tank. It's going to be very difficult for me to damage these tanks, as I explained before. So that tank is coming after me. I got to get out of here. When you are running away, you want to get as many obstacles between you and the enemy tank as possible. So that's why I took that sharp right turn. And I'm just as happy sitting here waiting for my allies to come save me. So we did clean up on this flank. The Centurion is now going to have to deal with all of my allies that are going to converge on this area. So because the bat chat went in, I'm going to try and help my ally. I'm going to try and get behind the Centurion to put in a kill shot. Unfortunately, what happened, I was using the auto-aim, and because my ally killed the Centurion, it released the auto-aim at the exact moment, so my shot went wild, and it hit my ally. It's one of the disadvantages of using the auto-aim. At the time, obviously, I didn't know what caused my shot to go wild, but I theorized that the reason why was because someone must have killed the Centurion. Score is 6-5. I've got 1,200 damage and 1,100 spotting damage. Now you'll notice this is what's going to make the game very easy. Most of the enemy tanks are on one side in one area, so I can make multiple different approaches. I just have to keep them spotted. My allies will do the rest. That was 752 damage. I'm going to count to 10. So by counting to 10, I will become unspotted, and then I will go and I will peek again. But only enough to spot those enemy tanks. I won't be able to damage any of those tanks. Or if I do damage the tanks, I'll only be able to do a little bit of damage. So I could have gone for a rear shot on that Object 704. I am obviously looking for that, for one of these SPGs. When you are firing at an enemy tank, there is something called a reticle. The bloom on your targeting reticle, your shell is going to land within that circle, so you want your tank to be as covered by that circle as possible. That's why I had to wait a little bit before I fired on that SPG. So I did 633 damage against the Type 4 Heavy, which is quite surprising. And that's the game. The score is 15-6. I did 3,600 damage, 1,800 spotting damage, and 2 kills. This tank is a WZ-111 1-4. This is a Chinese Tier 9 heavy tank, and the map is Tundra. I am going to get 3 kills, and I'm going to do 3,300 damage in this game. When I start this map, I usually head for this position, and I try to snipe across at enemy tanks that are heading west. And I almost always hit some tanks. And my theory is to be in the position where I am right now. I think it's the safest. I think it's the safest position. I got 460 damage so far on the KV-3. It's a very safe position to be here. You got a lot of rocks protecting you. You're closer to the enemy, which means you can spot them more easily. And they've got to turn their gun further in order to fire back at you than if they were to just go across. You do have to be careful because there can be tanks off in the distance on the rail line that will snipe back at you. Obviously, I should have my tank turned around. Sadly, I didn't do any damage against him. You notice that I did that with the auto aim, and the reason why is because I wanted to go out as quickly as I could. Basically, you lock them on with the auto aim. You go forward. As soon as it turns green, you fire and you come back. It's a very quick way to take a shot. Very risky position right here. I'm up to 1,000 damage. You do have to be careful when you play this position when there's artillery in the game, because you're likely to be the first one spotted, and artillery can hit you from here, from almost anywhere in the map. So that's 1 kill. One thing that I know about the game, on the west side, there tends to be a lot of heavy tanks. And the other aspect is the gameplay tends to be very slow on the west side. I almost never see a fast win on the west side. So usually you can take your time before, if you're a heavy tank and you want to go get into battle over there, you don't have to be in too much of a hurry. When I was on the bridge, you'll notice one of the first tanks that I took a shot at, I believe, was an AMX 1390. And the reason why is because I do watch the mini-map to check to see if there are any vulnerable tanks that I can shoot at while I'm on the bridge. I did switch to the HE rounds because I have to shoot at the turrets of the enemy tanks. The HE rounds are more likely to cause damage to the strong turrets of enemy tanks. Like here will be a very good example. If I had hit that tank, he would have been dead using an HE round. If I use an AP or APCR, he'd probably still be alive. You can see that what I'm doing here is I'm trying to use the slope to elevate my gun, even though it looks like I was unable to do so. That allows you to get your gun in a position that the enemy doesn't expect. Oh, missed a shot. Come on. Now there's a perfect example of how you use an HE round. I would not have been able to do that with an AP round or APCR round. And here's another example. Maybe I could have done that with an APCR round, especially because I'm a tier 9 and he appears to be a tier 7 tank. You can see that the AMX 1357 is coming up on my rear, so I got to be aware of him. Still firing HE rounds, doing a decent amount of damage, watching my rear. He did kill one of my allies, so you got to be aware of him. Unfortunately, I left that tank with some hit points to spare. Got to get these remaining tanks out of the game. That's a perfect example where you want to use an HE round to get that kill. I am loading the AP rounds at this point. And the base was captured, so we do have a victory. The score is 12-9. I got 3,300 damage. So the game shows you the sniping position I take up at the beginning of the game along the bridge. And it shows you a few cool shots using HE rounds that you can use. This tank is the Batchat 25T. This is a French tier 10 medium tank, and the map is Siegfried Line. I am going to get 5 kills, and I'm going to do 5,000 damage. Plus, I'm going to show you one of my favorite sniping positions on this map. When I play on this map, I often head in this direction, which is almost directly due south from the number 2 spawn. Knock down some of the trees, use the bush for cover, spot enemy tanks and snipe at them while they're trying to enter the town. It works out really well here. Those tanks are going to have a lot of difficulty getting into town. And often you will not be spotted. You're going to get spotted more at near the beginning of the game when there's more enemy tanks, when there's more scouts, etc. But as those tanks start to disappear, it's going to be more difficult for them to spot you. And as the enemy goes further into the town, you're going to be able to take up better positions. Like you notice I knocked another tree down. This position isn't good at the beginning of the game, but later in the game it is useful. Okay, so I used up my rounds. I did 1,100 damage. I'm going to do some spotting right now while I'm reloading. The score is 2-0. You can see the enemy is controlling the entrance to the town, which is the west side of the town. So you'll notice that I fired 5 of my rounds and I was not spotted. They're at the edge of my spotting range. Score is 3-3. I'm up to 2,300 damage. So we've got that HWK out in the field. We've got potential SPG out in the field. I always go for the ram. I didn't realize I was out of rounds. So I always go for the ram. If I had held on to one of my shots, I may have been able to damage that tank without firing my final round, and I might have had an extra round to use at the arty. The other thing you'll have noticed is that because I was stunned, I did not let the reticle close in all the way, which means that my shot went wild. When you have the aiming reticle, the shot's going to land within that reticle, so you want it to cover as much of the enemy tank as possible. Now the score is 9-7. I'm up to 3,900 damage. Now we get to go on the rear of the enemy flank. It'll be nice if I can make this shot. That's 4 kills. Hopefully that Panther 2 will be on my side of the field. I'm on very low hit points, so I do have to be careful. I'm up to 4,300 damage, 5 kills. I only have 75 hit points, so I do have to be careful. One of my allies says, nice cleanup, Bat Chat. Got 2 shells in the magazine. So you can see in the chat, the ISM says, give that man the golden broom. He was referring to what the comment that the T-92 had said. I got up to 5,200 damage, 400 spotting damage, 5 kills. I'm sure we're going to win this game. The score is 13-10. This tank is the Foch 155. This is a French Tier 10 tank destroyer. The map is Siegfried Line. This is an awesome tank. I'm so happy that I have this tank. I waited many years to be able to get it, and finally I do have it. When I play this style of tank, this style of turretless tank destroyer, what I usually do is go to the center of the map, and I go to this position because from here you can shoot all the way through the town, and you have easy access to certain things that are going on in the middle of the town. So there's often going to be enemy tanks in the distance over here that I can shoot at, and there's going to be fighting going on. You see we got some tanks right here. So I was able to get 1,600 damage. Basically, I take my shots and then I'm going to reverse while I'm reloading. It's an ideal position for 2 tanks side by side. Being on the left side usually means you're going to have more targets to shoot at. This is good for tanks that have a long reload, for tanks that have powerful guns that can do damage, a lot of damage in a short amount of time. You can see that E100 is my next target. He shouldn't be there. He's exposing his lower plate. I'm going to be able to damage him very easily. And I try to time it so I crest the hill when I'm ready to fire my gun. It's too bad that car was in the way. It did prevent me from taking some of my shots. I got up to 3,000 damage. Now I'm just focused on reversing. Obviously, I'll repair before the E100 gets a second shot in, so it might not be necessary to do the repair. Now that I'm almost reloaded, it's obviously I'm being a little bit impatient. I'm preparing to go back into position. It's very important to watch the mini-map while you're playing in this position to know if an enemy tank is about to cross in front of your path. Well, it's too bad that I missed those two shots. One thing about these tanks is you definitely want to get the gun laying drive on these tanks and any sort of crew skill that makes your tank aim faster. My team has controlled the center of the map, which is the western part of the town, which is why I'm not reversing outside the town while I'm reloading. One thing you'll notice about autoloaders is that you have to take longer to aim in your first shot, and usually your secondary and your third shot will aim in a lot faster. They don't have to aim in as far. So sometimes what I do is I fire my first shot without being completely aimed, and the reason why is because the reload time is often fast enough that it's equivalent to the aiming time. Obviously, when you have 3 shells in your autoloader, you're not going to waste a shell like that. But in a normal tank, it's okay to take a shot if you're not fully aimed. Score is 12-2. I got 4,900 damage, 444 spotting damage, and 3 kills. This tank is a WZ-131 GFT. This is a Chinese Tier 6 tank destroyer, and the map is El Halouf. I am going to get 4 kills. I'm going to do 1,900 damage. I'm going to get the top EXP, which will be 1,170 EXP, and I'm a low-tier tank, which obviously makes it easier for me to get the top EXP. So I'm taking the standard path I usually take. I head for these bushes, or sometimes I go into the little gully, and I use the bushes to advance across the enemy territory. As long as I'm spotting tanks, I'm going to stay in the bushes. I'm not going to cross this little gap here because enemy tanks were spotted. And we're going to take care of those tanks first before we move on. There is a light tank nearby I got to worry about because he could easily spot me. I have to stay perfectly still. So we got a lot of enemy tanks here. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 enemy tanks on this flank. And we've got 7 allied tanks. And we do have artillery in this game. So far, I've only got 90 spotting damage. We do have a lot of light tanks that are spotting in addition to me. So it's going to be a little bit of a slow game for me at the start. Okay, so we got one of those tanks out of the game. So when you're spotted, there's a rock in front of you. You just head for that rock. It's right there. You do have to be wary for SPG. I decided to head for the next rock formation. The next rock formation will allow you to proximity spot tanks that are up on the hill. You'll be able to do some flanking if you want to. So any tank that reverses into that position, for example, if they need to reload, there's a KV2. If he needs to reload, he's going to reverse to where the Black Prince was. He'll be a target for me. I usually head to the right. You can go in either direction. There's advantages to both. Obviously, there's a tank right there in front of me. I tried to track him. I don't know if I succeeded. And he was taken out of the game. Plus, I spotted an SPG. But remember, the SPG also knows that I'm here, but he's not aiming at me. So now you could go two different ways. I could either head south for that tank, who obviously knows that I'm here. Or I could have gone to the north to help out my allies. It looks like we have a Jagdpanzer who has not been spotted yet. I have to run away from him. So I pinged the mini-map to let my allies know that there's another tank out there. Because I'm a tier 6 and I'm doing damage to a tier 8, I'm going to get a lot more experience. That's 3 kills so far. Didn't use any APCR rounds in this game. All using standard rounds. Scores 12-7. I've got 1,900 damage, 750 spotting damage. Okay, so that's the game for me. I ended with 1,900 damage, 760 spotting damage. I got 4 kills. I got the top EXP, which was 1,170, and I did it with a low-tier tank. And this is common. It's very easy to do. The score was 13-9, and it was an easy win for my team. This tank is a Charioteer. This is a British Tier 8 tank destroyer, and the map is El Halouf. I am going to get 3 kills and 1,800 damage in this game. I'm going to use my standard tactic, which is to just drive through the center of the map. I'm going to go into the center, try to do some spotting, try to kill any scout tanks that come near me, and try to assault the enemy team and get on their rear flank as quickly as possible. So this is basically exactly what I do. I head for these bushes, line up in the bushes, try to spot something. Because there was an ARL 44 who could potentially spot me, I was waiting for him to pass. You can see how I set myself up so that I'd be less likely to be spotted when I fire my gun. If it weren't for the ARL, I would have been a lot further through on the bushes, but we have to wait until he's dead before I can advance. I waited until there were bushes between me and him so that when I fire, he's not going to spot me. So now I'm pulling into a firing position. You want to have a lot of bushes in front of you. And I'm in a somewhat of a hull down position. So now the ARL 44 is gone, and the Type 62, he's on the other side of the hill, so he's not going to spot me as I advance into the enemy territory. There's two ways to advance. You can either advance on this side, or you could advance that way. It really doesn't matter which way you go. The Type 62 is out of the game. So obviously it's going to be safer for me to advance on this side. I've got some allies got good allies backing me up. You know, I gauged the conditions of both sides, and I decided this would be safer for me. So now I'm not going to take out these tanks. I'm going to just spot them and let my allies do as much damage as possible. I might have to wait for my allies to take up positions. And there's no artillery in the game, so I don't have to worry about any of those surprise shots. Trying to take up positions where the SU won't expect me to be. To spot him, you want to get as close as possible, but you don't want to be where he's pointing his gun. Like, he expects me to be a little bit more on the right over here, but I'm not going to go that way. Obviously, he has an ally in the back. I'm pinging the map to let my allies know that there's another tank back there. So I hit him in the lower plate. Unfortunately, my ally did not listen to me. I notified him that there was another tank back there, and he went in, and that hidden tank did kill my ally. You can see that from this position. We've got this Type 64 that I could help with. Hopefully, I'll help take him out of the game. He's the priority at this point. We'll worry about the... Okay, now that he's done, we'll worry about the base. I'm going to let my ally take these tanks out. So he's within the 50-meter proximity spotting range. So I'm just going to sit here, let my ally shoot at him. The Tiger was on full health. We heard a couple shots go out, and now the Tiger has taken about 250 damage. So you'll notice that my tank is not flat, and because it's not flat, it affects your gun depression. That's one of the mistakes that I made. You really want to be as flat as possible. And because of that, I was unable to shoot at that IKV, and he had an open shot against me. So I'm reversing to correct it. And looks like he's got a buddy here. Even though I'm not getting the spotting damage, I'm going to let my allies soften up those tanks as much as possible. You can see on the minimap that the Type 59 is headed in this direction, so maybe I'll get a nice surprise shot on him. So the Tiger learned his lesson. He knows he can't sit out there at the open with our allied light tank sniping on him. And obviously his gun was pointed away from me, which means I was able to go in and get a shot in. And because he's reloading, I'm going to take another shot. But he'll be out of the game. Scores 14-6. I got 2 kills and 1,500 damage. And it's like I said, you know, I was spotting for my team, but I didn't get spotting damage for all those hits on that Tiger, which is a little bit unfair, but unfortunately that's the way the system is. Had to wait for my ally to pass by, went in for the ram, did 194 ram damage, and that's the game. This tank is a Tiger II. This is a German Tier 8 heavy tank. The map is El Haluf. I am going to get 2,200 damage. I'm going to show you a sniping position. I'm going to play the game. This is typical of the way I would play if I'm going to do a lot of sniping and if I have a slow tank that I'm playing in midfield. If you watch my videos, you know that I love to play in the center of the map. It allows you to spot in all directions, to shoot in all the directions. It's also very dangerous. You can get incoming fire from all directions. So if you get spotted, the first thing you want to do is head for the opposite, for the slope, so that you're opposite on the slope of the enemy tank, so they obviously can't shoot at you. Most people with heavy tanks would want to go to the A1 position in the northwest. However, I am a Tier 8 tank, and because I'm a Tier 8 tank, my gun is not going to be very effective against the Tier 9 and Tier 10 tanks that are going to be fighting in that position. So I decided to play over here. Basically what you do is, if nobody is here, you take a command and control dominant position. If the enemy is here, which they are, you wait until the enemy is dead before you advance on. So we have a T-49, you know, it's common, it happens frequently, and we have the FV-4202. So the plan is going to be to control this position, to help my team kill these tanks, and once those tanks have been killed, we're going to move on to their base and try and flank the enemy. From this position, you can snipe at the enemy through this gap over here in the distance. You'll see that there's a gap. And if we get any chances at sniping at enemy tanks in that gap, we're going to take advantage of it. At some point, someone is going to have to go deal with the tank that's capping. You'll notice that a T-54 Mod 1 did cross through the gap, so he's a potential target. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tanks backing me up. The enemy has at least 3 tanks that we know of already. So you can shoot through this gap off in the distance from many different positions. You don't have to do it just from here. I could do it from here, and I can do it from the rock formations on the other side of the hill that I'm on. One of the things you do want to do is you do want to knock down as many trees as you can to give yourself additional cover. You also want to, you don't want to go to the edge of the hill. You want a lot of distance in front of you. The closer you get to that edge, the more danger you're going to be in, the more likely you're going to be spotted by light tanks that are at the encounter base, and the more likely that the enemy off in the distance is going to spot you. So stay away from that area when you're sniping up onto this into this area. So now we can see that the T-49 has finally been spotted along with another tank. We're going to help our team take him out. You can see there's a first tank that's gone into the gap over there. So that T-54 Mod 1, he wants to shoot at my allies that are on the base, but what he doesn't know is I'm going to be defending my allies. So every time he tries to come out there, I'm going to be taking shots back at him. And now we got a second tank that showed up. So I got 316 damage on the Centurion Action X. You can see the T-34. We got a third enemy tank that's at the base now. If you look at the enemy side, the eastern part of the map, there's no spotted enemy tanks. So they're either gone or they haven't been spotted yet, but they're less defended on that side of the map now. Our T-34 has crossed over, the Skoda T-50 has crossed over, the Grill 15 has also crossed over. They're going to get some good positions. I'm going to help with some cover fire. If anybody tries to take any shots at them, I'm going to be shooting back. Score is 4-3. I've got 950 damage and 1,000 spotting damage. You can see that my team is starting to take up good positions. I just as well could have gone to where that T-34 and the Grill 15 is. I chose to remain in this spot. They're going to have shots on the base that I'm not going to be able to take shots at. You can see that the Skoda, if you look at the mini-map, you can see our Skoda T-50 is taking up the sniping position on the enemy side. One of the things that I should have done is I should have alerted the T-54 as to which targets I was aiming for, so he knows to focus on which tanks are more of a threat to him, and to allow us to focus on the tanks that are in the corner, so that he doesn't have to expose himself to any unnecessary danger. I've switched to APCR rounds. I ran out of the AP rounds. That's one kill. We're starting to somewhat encircle the enemy. Scores 11-6. One thing about playing this position, I've sat here for many minutes not being able to shoot at anything, so it's not a golden position, but be aware of what you can do and what can happen. If you are capping the base, they will come to that position right there where that T-54 is to try and reset the base, so you will have targets in that gap. People are obviously more aware of the game now, so they tend not to sit in that middle area. A year ago, I would have had a lot more shots through that gap right there. That was an example where the T-54 had to drive through, and I took a shot at him. And as I was saying, a year ago, it would have happened more frequently. Tanks would just be sitting there unaware of what was going on. The players are a little bit smarter now. Okay, so now it's just a cleanup operation. I got 2,200 damage, which is really good for a Tier 8 tank in a Tier 9 and Tier 10 game with a 3-5-7 matchmaking. Got 1,000 spotting damage, which was me spotting at the beginning of the game. Obviously, we won on our side of the map very quickly. I probably won't have any more action in this game. I'm going to speed it up a little. And that's the game. This tank is the AMX 1390. This is a French Tier 9 light tank. The map is Prokhorovka. I am going to get 3 kills. I'm going to do 2,900 damage, and we're going to have an easy win for our team. Normally, I don't play on this side of the map. Probably looking to try a new spotting position or something that I haven't done in a long time. There's a few different locations you can use. What you really want to do is go as far as possible into these bushes without getting spotted. Unfortunately, I was spotted. Now, what happens if you try to stay in the town, you're going to be a little red dot on the enemy's mini-map, and tanks will come looking for you, so you don't want them to know where you are. Looks like I'm still spotted. Or maybe he took a wild shot. I don't know. You can see there are a lot of different positions that you can sit in on this map. But the question is, how much spotting can you do? So the bush that I was heading to when I was spotted by the T-44 would have been a great position. It would have allowed us to keep the enemy team spotted, and they would have been unable to advance easily. So obviously, because I'm spotted, I want to head south. The further south you go, the safer you are, because there actually is a little bit of a slope to the land. I could easily get behind this 252U. Very risky to go after those tanks using the auto aim. Fortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to climb this. Yeah, I'm sure I would be able to do it with a little bit of practice. But sadly, it's difficult to climb that slope from that side. You have to go around. Score 7-1. I got 1,700 damage, 400 spotting damage. There's 2 enemy SPGs that have not been spotted yet. It's very well possible that they're nearby. I usually go to the red line because in order for the enemy to shoot at you, they have to turn their guns all the way around, and turning them around takes them more time. They're less likely to do it. There's lots of advantages to being as far away from the enemy as possible. Up to 2,400 damage and 650 spotting damage. Normally you don't want to go on the enemy base. Avoid it at all costs because it lets the enemy know where you are. It looks like you are able to pass by with this tank without going on the base, but obviously you can't do it with every tank. Still got a couple tanks that we haven't spotted yet. I decided to leave my shell in the magazine, although I missed my shot. So at the end of the game, there's a mad rush to kill that final tank and for you to unload your shells as quickly as possible. Every second counts. That was 2,900 damage, 1,200 spotting damage, and 3 kills. This tank is the E50. This is a German Tier 9 medium tank, and the map is Prokhorovka. People talk about this tank. They like the fact that they use it for ramming, apparently. I'm not that crazy about this tank. I think it's underpowered. I use the fuel consumable because I don't like the performance. Not that crazy about the gun. I'm not that crazy about playing this tank in general. But I think this is going to be an interesting game. It's probably not going to be a high damage game or anything like that, but you're probably going to see a lot of different tactics used in this game. There is no artillery in this game, so I don't have to worry too much. Obviously, that guy did take a shot at me. But I occasionally try this position. You know, I don't do it every game. I lost 1,000 hit points because of that tank. So I try that position occasionally to see if it's effective for doing anything. Not really that useful. But it is a good crossover point. You can cross over the tracks at that location. I've done it many times. People don't expect you to do it. So if you need to do it very quickly, it is a possibility. You can see over here we can obviously snipe on the enemy. You would think that you can't hit under the trains, but I got 2 out of 4 under the train. Plus I got some spotting damage. Okay, so I brought him down on most of his hit points, even though one of my allies got the kill. That's a key position. From that position, you can shoot at tanks that are sniping on the rail. Now, obviously, I'm trying to knock the house down. I have a lot of rounds, so why not knock the house down so I don't have to drive and get closer to him? I'm a lot safer when I'm a distance away from him. He had 1 hit point, and I took him out of the game. So I used around 5 or 6 rounds in order to kill off that tank, and it was totally worth it. I still have 75 rounds left. You notice there's a lot of enemy tanks in the midfield area, so they probably don't have a lot of tanks up on the hill. When you're first starting out, you'll notice that my first 2 shots at that tank were right on the top sliver of his armor. It's definitely worth it, especially if you have a lot of rounds, to take risky shots, because you'll be surprised at how often you'll actually make those shots. The enemy is still concentrated in the middle of the map. My team is somewhat spread out. However, the enemy has taken up a front line, while my team has not. The other thing you're going to notice is that the enemy is concentrated in the middle of the map, but they're not spotted. If they're not spotted, it's not helping my team. So you want to keep those tanks spotted if you can. That basically means every 10 seconds, just drive nearby from a safe position. They just became unspotted again. So from a safe position, you're going to drive nearby. This is obviously to try and spot some of these tanks. You do have to be careful because there may be one enemy tank up on the hill, which I believe was a T-34B, who could easily take me out of the game. So I don't want to engage the enemy head on. I just want to try and keep them spotted, hope that my allies will take them out. My allies are now advancing on the hill. So if they're advancing on the hill, I have to be prepared to support them from below. They did spot a tank up on the hill, which is a T-34B. Yeah, it's too bad I didn't damage that guy. Because I have a lot of rounds. I'm actually switching to the APCR rounds. It's okay to take some blind shots if you have a pretty good idea where the enemy tank is. You don't know when he's going to be spotted again. So I ran out of my AP rounds. I usually use a third AP, a third APCR, and a third AG. And it's very rare that I use the APCR rounds. I switch to the HE rounds because it's a rounded turret. It's going to be difficult to damage with the APCR rounds. Now, when your gun gets damaged, it's going to hurt you. Basically, what it does is you cannot aim in as far. So it hurts you in the long range. At a close range, it's not going to bother you as much. Because it's the end of the game, I decided not to repair my gun and save myself a little bit of cash. And because, obviously, I'm not going to kill that last tank. So that's the game. I got 1,900 damage and 1,500 spotting damage. I got 1 kill.